Okay, so today we'll be talking to John Barry. John Barry is an attorney in town in Omaha here, and actually he is a veteran, and gosh, he does so many things. We learned today he's an author, he's developed some apps. I mean, he's doing a number of things, and obviously I relate to him as far as an entrepreneur and a prior service member, but he had some great things to say today, and I think I couldn't write fast enough, to be honest. A couple of my favorite quotes that I will always remember is nobody becomes a great football player by reading a book about football. And I feel like that's applicable because it's that analysis paralysis that Colin brought up in the podcast. It's like, look, podcasts are important. YouTube is important. You can learn a lot. You can make a lot of connections, but you can only get so far. You need to actually immerse yourself in what you're doing. And that's exactly what he lived by and what he talks about in the podcast, how he tries to actually implement that, not only in the military, not only in the law field himself, but for his business that he's doing. And the second quote I liked, and it's something we're actually going to get put on the wall here, I know we're going to, is nobody cares about you. How can you help them? Now, I guess our favorite phrase is no one cares, work harder. But the point of his quote, nobody cares about you, how can you help them, is it's cheeky, it's funny, but it's real. Nobody watches this podcast because they love my freckles or they really care about my first single family. They want to learn about multifamily so they can benefit themselves. And so really what he's trying to say there is, while you could be good at anything you do or anything you're building, make sure in order to connect with others, you're finding a way to help them. It will certainly help you. If people invest with us from watching our podcast, that helps us. If people invest in liquid lending solutions, that helps us. But unless we can actually explain and have that person digest how it will help them, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I love those two quotes he brought today.
Yeah, there was a ton of value. John Barry is a massive leader. He's a military veteran. He was an Army Ranger. And he is a server within the community of Omaha and actually all veterans. He's looking to become one of the biggest Veterans Affairs attorneys, fighting for veterans, leading veterans. Something that we're going to get into in the podcast, which I thought was really interesting, that this guy's an innovator. He is building a courthouse to replicate the courthouse for his attorneys. He used a quote today that every day is game day. And what I love about that so much is that practice how you play. Practice how you play. And it goes back to the analysis paralysis. When you're reading all these books, when you're like, I think this deal works good. I underwrote it. Cool. On to the next deal the next day, but you don't take action on it. He's actually building a courthouse to put his attorneys in so they can feel the pressure that it's game day. So that's just something innovative, and it's something different. John also owns some real estate. He actually bought his own building, which he houses about 110 staff members. I believe he has 30 practicing attorneys, which is an astonishing amount. He's got 40 individuals on his staff that are veterans. Once again, he does what he says. He says what he's going to do. He has a lot of energy, a lot of good quotes. This guy, even if you're not interested in law, even if you're not interested in real estate, you will learn a lot about leadership from this podcast. So let's get it rolling.
John Barry, without further ado.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate with your host, Colin Schwartz and
Chris Pomerlew.
Today, we have a fantastic guest, a friend, and a military veteran, John Barry. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So you have quite the prestigious resume. You're an incredibly accomplished attorney. So I would like to start off with where you are now, what your business looks like, kind of a real high-level overview. But then let's back it up, and you tell us how you became the John Barry that you are today.
Sure. So today we're about 110 team members. 40%, about 40 of those team members are veterans. Over 20 of them are Marines. We have, I can't even count the number of lawyers, but we're a national veterans law firm. So we represent veterans nationwide. We have veteran clients in every state and territory. And we also practice in the areas of personal injury and criminal defense in Nebraska, and Iowa.
So overall, I just want to make sure that we're going to go through a laundry list of things that you're a part of.
Sure.
But what are some of what are your top 3 bullet points or businesses and or ventures that are taking up the most of your time right now so they can get a feel for what makes up John Berry?
Yeah, it's amazing because it changes so much. So we've hit the Inc. 5000 list 6 years in a row. And to grow, you got to keep changing it up. You can't do the same things and expect different results. And so the things I'm doing now, number one, finishing up the book, Veteran Led, about my military experiences. I didn't want to be the Jocko or the David Goggins, that tell the world that, hey, you can be a super athlete too. But it's more about taking every veteran who has those basic skills that we learn in the military, that I know you learned, Chris,
yeah,
and applying them in business or in whatever they do when they get out. Because the reality is that the 22 deaths a day, veteran suicides, is real. I've had 3 of my soldiers commit suicide since I got out. So I want to provide that purpose. And I was really motivated years ago. A friend of mine started a CrossFit gym near Fort Benning. And at one point they had 5 of them. They consolidated into one. And I showed up, we had a few beers, and he says, all right, I'll see you at 5 a.m. And I showed up at 5 a.m. And there's these amputees, there's some older veterans, there's military spouses, and they're all doing CrossFit. And it was kind of like, what's your excuse? And it was funny. There was this young captain. He was a captain. He got out. He was disabled, and he was one of the coaches. And my buddy Chris started yelling at him because he wasn't getting on me for getting low enough on the squats.
Nice.
Right? And so I look at the world that way as you have to continue to evolve. So for me, it's always been about being a part of the veteran community and then trying to share those lessons. So the Veteran-Led book is important to me right now. We are building our own courtroom. I think that, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of lawyers who maybe did well in law school struggle. And they struggle because they're not training. Think about the sports, right? Think about the Huskers in the 80s where we had the strength training room, which, by the way, had a little turf. I don't know if you guys remember, but there's a little turf section there for people to run their 40s and do the agility drills. And then they moved on to building a field house where you could actually, I think it's called the Cook Field House, where they practice. And for attorneys in any profession, it should be the same thing. You need realistic training. Once again, something I learned from the military. It's real easy to go out and shoot expert, but it's a lot different when you're shooting, moving, and communicating. And so you need that realistic training to make good lawyers. So the courthouse, the book, and then the final thing is really the tech piece of it. When we look at the unique abilities of our team members, I like to think about how can I amplify them? How can I get them out there so that they can do more, not just so that they can win more cases, make more money, feel more fulfilled, but so that they can reach their potential. So there's a lot of technological advances that we're making. I'd love to tell you that we're inventing stuff. We're not. We're just following the industry. But in the legal industry, just following, I think, the business industry, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're selling yourself short a little bit by saying that you're just, because you're actually implementing things that is in a realm that is relatively archaic.
Yeah. And I mean, most lawyers, when they come to our office, they're blown away in our non-client facing spaces throughout our offices. I've got 6 what I call jumbotrons. And this comes from Mike Morse's book, Fireproof. I went and visited him, and he's talking about his jumbotrons, and I'm in his office. I don't see him. And it turns out these jumbotrons, we go into his COO's office, and there's a bunch of Excel spreadsheets that he has on a screen, but that's not what I envisioned. So I created it. I used a program called Domo, which most businesses can use, and basically it streams the data into my 70-inch screens, and then every 10 seconds it refreshes with my top 10 metrics. So that way, and look, it's a leaderboard. So that way, the people who are competitive get to see what the score is every day. I mean, God, I can't imagine living a life where I don't know if I'm winning or losing every day. That's what's so great about being a trial lawyer is if you won or you lost. But I love to give my team members that experience. And that's why we love to hire veterans, former athletes, farm kids, people that have paper outs, people who want to know what the score is, people who care about metrics. Because at the end of the day, how do you measure your growth?
Right.
If you don't know where you are or where you're going and you don't see it day after day. But can you imagine, Chris, especially in your business? I mean, look, at some point, especially for people who are successful like you, it's not about the money for your lifestyle anymore. Right? It doesn't, if either of you had an extra $5 million, over the next 5 years, would it make a difference in your life?
No.
Would you quit? Would you stop working?
Absolutely not.
Right. And so the main thing is, but how would you, but you could measure your success that way, right?
Absolutely.
And I know for people that are driven like you guys, that's it. You need the number. And that's the type of people I want to recruit to my organization, is people who have that need that, oh, I'm going to work until I, hit X number. Like maybe I want to make $200,000 a year, and that's going to keep me happy. Well, maybe that might be enough to fulfill all your financial goals, but is it going to keep you happy? If your future, there's a great coach called Dan Sullivan. He said, your future has to be bigger than your past. And if your future isn't getting bigger, it's getting smaller, right? Grow or die. And for me, that's misery, right? If you're just, oh, I'm very happy making this amount. Now, here's the bad news is, according to Dan Kennedy, but that's like 95% of people.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's all they want. They want that, and they're happy with that. My guess is those people aren't listening to this podcast because they're happy with what they have. They're watching, some reruns on TV, eating some Oreos, got the cheese dust from the Cheetos all over their fingers, and they don't care. They don't want more out of life. But for me, I've got kids, I've got team members. If I'm not growing and giving them more as a leader, I am absolutely failing my family and I'm failing my team.
Yeah, and you're going behind too. I think that's a big epiphany that any of us have. It's, if you are not going forward, you're going backward, because the world is always moving forward. Everything around you is continually moving forward. If you are not utilizing that same energy to push yourself and to move forward, oftentimes, and I remember sitting at a lunch with you, John, and you said, okay, when you start off on this entrepreneurial journey, you get from A to B, but all you can see is what's forward, the true entrepreneur, because you've already accomplished what's in the background and all you see is the future. And I think those are the people that actually make the biggest impact. It's ingrained into our culture. You're going to work a good job. You're going to go to college. You're going to work 40 years, 65, boom, here's your retirement, and you're done. Now you can start declining. I don't know what the stat is, but it's a frightening amount of people die, within the first 10 years after retirement, because they lose purpose, they lose that motivation, they lose that grind. Oftentimes we're asked, Chris, Colin, when are you guys going to slow down? The question is why. We may slow down on acquisitions, but that doesn't mean we're going to slow down on business. We're going to keep perfecting our business and working on our business. We're going to work on the media side. We're going to work on these different things because, as you said, we have employees, we have family members that we need to take care of, and we need to be that example. So I love that. What are some of the traits and what are the similarities between leaders in the military world and the civilian world? What are some of those leadership traits that you've noticed?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of great things we learn in the military, and as you know, Chris, a lot of bad habits and really some bad leadership lessons. I think one of the traits is definitely identifying your stars. In the military, we are doing officer evaluation reports. We're always evaluating for potential, not just for talent and past performance, but who are the potential stars. And I learned that in the military. And my last job after I went off active duty, I went to the National Guard, and I was the officer and warrant officer candidate school commander. And so we were responsible for commissioning these officers. And it was a great job because we really learned, okay, is this person officer material? And then if they are, then how do I develop them? I think in the business world where we fail a lot of times is, we have our C's who are let's face it, they're mediocre at best, our B's who are good and have potential, and our A's who are the top. Right? And we waste a lot of time trying to bring our C's up to the B status instead of making our A's even better than they are. So in the military, you learn that, right? That when you are deciding who is going to be responsible for the lives of America's sons and daughters, you want the champions. And here's the thing, not everybody wants to be a champion. Nobody wins a race they don't want to run. And I think that in the military, we learn how to evaluate people, how to evaluate their motivation. You become very discerning about character. And so that's an important lesson that is carried over to the civilian side. Obviously, there's a lot of stupid, big bureaucracy stuff that I hate in the military. That, CIF, Central Issue Facility, where they issue a bunch of equipment that you'll never use. And then when you go back, they're worried about, your canteen cup isn't clean. I'm like, didn't we just leave billions of dollars worth of equipment in Afghanistan? And you're worried about me turning in, that $2.50 canteen cup, right? So they're I think big can get really dumb and lose agility. And I think that's one of the things we learned about the military is that, some of the best units, right? You're talking about your Army Special Forces, your Rangers, your SEALs, your Delta Force. you have these smaller units that have agility that can get a lot more done. And I think the bigger you get as an organization, the more policies and procedures you have, the dumber you tend to get as an organization, and the agility you start to lose. And so I learned that from the military. That's always scared me about growth, is at what point do we get so big that we become like the military? Now, that being said, we have the United States has the greatest military in the history of the world, and it's phenomenal. But there are lessons about how to do things better from large organizations. And I got to tell you, I do not like the way the military trained us. I remember Sergeant Major came to me when I was a lieutenant and said, I said, we've got some non-performers. They gotta go. And we were getting ready to deploy, and the Sergeant Major's like, oh no, you're taking them. And this was, like I said, this was kind of the senior non-commissioned officers having conversations with the young lieutenants, which rarely happens. And he said, well, Lieutenant, those soldiers had a high enough ASVAB score. They are physically fit. They're mentally sound. If you can't get them to the next level, it's because you, as a leader, have failed to train them and failed to mentor them and failed to develop them. Well, that was all bullshit, okay? Because they're, like I said, if someone doesn't want to be in the race, they're not going to win.
Right.
And if people don't want that, you can't. Cy Wakeman, now from Omaha, she said you can only lead the willing. And I think in the military, we think that we got to lead everybody. And as a civilian, that's not true. And like I said, in the military, we don't want to fire anybody. We may give them Article 15. They may get court-martialed. There are things that happen when people screw up. But generally, we feel like as leaders, if our soldier breaks the law or gets disciplined, that we failed. And I think as a civilian, you have to understand that life is not like that. Look, I would love, if the law allowed, to have a 90-day immersion experience for all my new employees at Berry Law. We'd have a barracks. We'd do PT in the morning. We'd eat breakfast together. They'd work all day. We'd do study hall at night, reset. So they'd get totally immersed in the culture. Because you think about it, Chris, like when you were, as a young officer, right? When you get immersed in the culture, you learn so much better and you develop those relationships quicker.
Certainly.
And I'd love to be able to do that. And I think that's a great thing that the military has taught me, is really immersion. And the great lawyers, I got to tell you, the best lawyers I work with are the people that by the time we're getting in trial, I mean, they are so immersed. It's like it's like locking them in the room and they don't want to leave until they have done everything possible to win the case. And then you get the people who are like, it's 5 o'clock, I want to hit the bar. So I hope that answers your question, but those are some examples of what has worked well from the military. And I think some of the lessons learned in the military that are things that I try to avoid.
I think that I use stuff that I learned in the military every single day. I was not in as long as you were, but I think there's a lot to be learned, both good and bad, from the military. I like, basically, to encompass what you said, is to grow fast in a smart way. And that's not something that the military always does. Immersion's huge. And we spoke earlier about you building a courtroom. Talk about immersion for your attorneys. Tell us a little bit about that, or what you're doing at Berry Law with that immersion process.
And how that fits into your vision. I know you're a big guy on vision, your core values, all those items. This most certainly is part of it. So yeah, to Chris's question, please.
Well, I think it starts when you start losing cases, right? And you start looking at, well, why am I losing, right? And I think for some of it, it was just not being prepared. And you would say, well, wait a minute, I read my outline for my cross-examination 4 times. I went through all the reports again. I built a trial binder. Why did I not win? And maybe you didn't use a focus group. Maybe you didn't do the things that require feedback. Right? I always believe that feedback is a gift. But if you build
AARs,
the after action review, but if you build that courthouse, right, or that courtroom, and people can come in there, your lawyers can come in there, and they can actually practice that cross-examination, practice the impeachment, practice refreshing the recollection of the witness, practice voir dire, right? And sometimes you have to bring in people for that, but the key is to get them to actually do the action. Look, nobody gets to be a great football player by reading a book about football. But if we get someone in on a football field and have them run some drills with a football, with other people around, and getting feedback, they can improve. And so in my mind, this is a way to elevate the game of our attorneys. I think that, and once again, that's the team I want to be on. I want to be on the team of people who want to keep getting better.
Yeah, that's interesting. To relate this to real estate, there's this thing called analysis paralysis. It's when the individuals, they read the book, and then they read the second book and the third book, the fourth book, and they're back through to the beginning, and they're reading the book again, and they know everything about real estate. but not once have they set out on the field. Not once have they put in an offer. Not once have they stepped outside of their comfort zone. So I really love the courthouse idea, because what you're doing is giving them that real world, that real life example, so that they can feel the tension that's going on. They can feel the excitement. They can feel the pressure. And I think all too often people want to stay in their comfortable little bubble. And it's, what do they say about perfection's the enemy of good or great? I hate perfection. I hate perfectionists. I would love if everything was perfect, but that's impossible. That's why you don't see perfection, because it never occurs. And so many people are in the pursuit of that. But the more and more and more that you do these real world experiences, the closer and closer you are going to get to that. And you're going to get your head out of the books and actually realize that there's a lot more dynamic things in this world. So I just love that idea. That's, I've never heard anything like that before.
Well, Colin, I think this is a great point, because it's real easy to make a decision, a hypothetical decision. But when real money is out there and it's a real decision that's going to affect the future of your organization and your financial well-being and the financial well-being of your team members, it's a totally different game.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
No, I mean, I could regurgitate the same thing you guys both said, but I mean, when I was an attorney, I got a couple years of practice in, but then my firm sent me to basically an immersion type trial school for a week, and it was worse than law school. It was wake up extremely early. You'd sit with experts and cross-examination, direct examination all day, and then at night you prepare, and the next day you'd come in and practice it. And I felt like I had only been practicing for 2 years when I showed up. When I left that school, I sincerely felt as though I've been practicing for 5 or 6 years. And I'll never forget that feeling of going into the courtroom thereafter. The confidence is way higher. I had 0 minutes in an actual courtroom, more than I did a week before. But I felt so much different. It's just being immersed in that. And talk about the applicability to real estate. There are so many people who, we get this question all the time. What do you do to be successful? What do you do? Well, I mean, I can only tell you, listen to so many podcasts, read so many books. I love the quote here. You can, nobody becomes a great football player by reading a book about football. I mean, that's so true. And so the fact that you're doing that in-house with your firm is, I feel, trend setting. I think it's maybe, I don't know what's being done on the coast, but in the Midwest, I know people from firms everywhere. I don't know anybody doing that. I think that's huge. So I think you learn that from the military somehow, some way, and you're applying that now.
We train as we fight. Right. And so we have to make training realistic, and we have to record it, and so that we can go back and show people, this is what you did right, this is what you did wrong. So it's that after action review, it's that realistic training. And yeah, like I said, this is not, most of my ideas are not original. I have some friends throughout the country that have done this. They have a little bit different perspective on it, but at the end of the day, I think that's what's great about working with people in different industries, or people in your industry and other parts of the country. You can really learn a lot. I had a grandfather, this is back before Home Depot, but he was in Iowa, and he had Berry Lumber Company, about 5 other lumber companies, and it was an interesting time back then. But he would travel throughout Iowa, and he said, there's never a lumberman who's so dumb you can't learn something from him. And I think there's something to be said for, in any industry, right? If you go to a different area, a different county, a different country, you can learn so much from what your peers are doing, or like I said, people in other industries. There's so much, I think, to learn out there. And if you're not always learning, you're really missing out.
Listen more than you speak.
Oh, I'm bad at that.
We're all terrible at that. We are all excited, and we all want to accomplish big things. We all have questions, but the more time you can take to listen, to your point, I love that. A lumberjack what is it? A lumberjack ask?
A lumberman, yeah.
A lumberman. Yeah, I love that, because it does not matter. I can talk to my employees, just random conversations, and I learn something new about my business every single day. And if I am just spitting out orders and I'm not receiving anything, the company stays stagnant. It's only going to go as far as what my vision is for that. So that's phenomenal.
So I heard a little inkling there about, so this entrepreneurial gene you have sounds like it dates back a while, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that's my grandfather on my dad's side. Then my mom's parents were farmers, right? And farmers are very entrepreneurial. And then, I had a paper out when I was 10 years old. I detasseled corn when I was 14. I think I was doing both at the same time. I was doing the afternoon paper out so I could do the morning detasseling. But, I've always had that desire. And when I became a lawyer, I thought, this is it. Like, I'm not going to get the opportunity to do this. And that, then all of a sudden I kind of learned, the law is not just a practice, it's also a business. And you have to treat it like a business, and therein lies the opportunity. And so, I think this has gone back. It's probably in my genes. It's who I am. I mean, even, my last real estate purchase, right? I knew I needed 10,000 square feet downtown Omaha with parking. When that building became available in Omaha, it met all the requirements. I probably could have slow walked it and done a little more due diligence, but I knew that's what I needed to complete the vision. And I think that's always how I've been. If there's a vision, you have to do what's necessary to make it work. You have to take risks. As the saying goes, you leap before the net appears, and there's always going to be a net. I mean, I think people get so freaked out. Right? It's like we talked about. You want to read all the real estate books and you're freaked out when you're in a deal. But the reality is we live in the United States of America, greatest country in the world. And when I was deployed, I would go to these, it's crazy. If you're poor here, right, you live in an apartment with air conditioning, flat screen TV, you got a smartphone, a microwave oven. If you're poor in, the place I've been, Iraq and Bosnia, you lived in a bombed out place with no electricity, no running water, no windows.
No support.
And you're fighting every day to get something to eat and take care of your family.
And somehow, many times, they're still more appreciative of what they have than we are over here sometimes.
Yeah, but and here's my point. Even if you fail, even if you take that big leap in that real estate investment and you fail, are you and your family really going to be homeless in America? No. Someone's going to take care of you. If not, unfortunately, the government can take care of you. Nobody wants that. But the reality is, if you take that big risk and you fail, it's not like someone's going to put you in debtor's prison. It's crazy. I talk to people who go bankrupt, lawyers who have totally failed and have come back. And like, yeah, it's crazy. I lost everything. And then the next week, I received 3 credit cards in the mail.
Yeah.
It's, I think,
God bless America.
Yeah. Built on the dream.
Yeah.
You talked about books earlier, and I'm sorry for the quick segue there, but I do want to talk about this because I think you have one out and one's coming out, right? Can you tell us about those? What's going on with that?
Sure. So the next battle is about just stories about veterans getting their VA disability benefit.
And this is the one you already have out?
This is the one that's already out.
Okay.
So this is something I put together. There's some great books put out by NVLSP. It's a pro bono nonprofit that helps veterans, and they put out this great book. This great book, but it's intimidating, right? I mean, it's one of those books that if you look at it, it's about 5 inches high, but it is like the Bible of veterans disability benefits. And of course, it tells you everything you need to know, but it doesn't tell you the why. So what I wanted, our biggest challenge with helping veterans was a lot of them would say, well, I don't deserve the benefits, or I don't want to do it, or it's taking too long, or I'm tired of fighting these VA disability appeals. And so I put together some of our best, obviously not using names, and changing the facts around a little bit, but really some of the stories that I've heard about how we've changed lives. A homeless veteran in Omaha lives under a bridge because after the Vietnam War, the VA never processed his shell shock claim, which is now PTSD, right? Ended up getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of back pay, got the treatment he needed. He's now owns a home, right, and is married, right? His whole life changed. And then there are the people who come back and have some serious issues and don't want to deal with their demons, right? And when they could be getting compensation for it. Then there's people like that I know that have built businesses. I didn't want to say a specific name, but that came back and used that money. He said, John, if I didn't have my VA disability money, that cushion of over $3,000 a month, I wouldn't have started this business. I would have been too scared. He said, but knowing that I have that money, and then he had some military retirement on top of it, he was like, I have confidence to go forward. And then, of course, the other issue is, like I said, with all the mental health conditions, is they're getting help. But you know who gets screwed when you don't go after your VA disability benefits? Usually it's your family, your children, because they know you've got a problem, or they're the ones that are taking care of you. And a lot of times the VA can pay for those services. And so I think veterans, a lot of times they think, oh, well, if I get it, somebody else can't get it. I'm like, no. In fact, you need to get it so somebody else can. I mean, we all know how government budgets work. If you don't spend the money, you don't get the next year. Yeah, and so you gotta go out and do this. So that's what the first book is about. It's called The Next Battle. It's on Amazon. I think we sell it for like $10, but write us, email us. We'll give it to you for free, because that was the idea. We send it to every new veteran client to give them some motivation, but also there's some important information about how to be successful with your claim. So we always want to push that information forward, because my goal is to help the veteran community reach its potential. It's been fractured. We've seen there's the VFW, the American Legion, but my generation, the OIF, OEF veterans, some of us have joined. There's different entrepreneurial groups out there, but everything is very fractured, right? There's no, in the last election, did anybody care about the veterans' voice? No. Who do we blame though? Us, the veterans. We should have rallied and said, let's do this. And finally we did, and that was the Camp Lejeune Justice Act and the PACT Act, where we finally said, look, you owe us, right? We're not going to stand for the lies that happened at Camp Lejeune. It was it's so bad. It was a blatant cover-up. We're not going to stand for what happened with the burn pits, and nothing's being done. Oh, by the way, there's still burn pits, but at least we're taking care of our soldiers. But, so that was that book. Veteran-led is the next level. Get your benefits, get back on your feet. Now let's start talking about all the lessons you learn in the military that you can learn in business. And let me share some of mine with you, and let me help you. And once again, this isn't, I'm a great war hero book, because I'm not. I served great heroes, who had multiple deployments, who stayed in active duty. One of my good friends who owns a business, 4 Bronze Stars with V Device, 2 Purple Hearts, multiple deployments, and running a business and serving his community. It's for people like that who need who I think probably need a little bit of guidance.
Yeah.
But then also those that want to start out and those that are just getting into the corporate world. It's like, look, dude, you have the basic skills. Use them, and let me help you get there. So this isn't, like I said, the great war story, and I don't really have any great war stories.
But you were a Ranger, correct?
Yeah, I did. I was an infantry officer in the Army, so I graduated from the Army Ranger School. So I had the tab, so I have the designation, and so I have I got to be an infantry officer, which in my mind is probably the best decision I made at age 22 to be a young infantry officer. Mm-hmm. Single guy out there, I got to see the world. It was, one of the best decisions I made. But yeah, I like I said, I was lucky to be in for 20 years, but, about 5 of that with deployments was active duty, and the rest was, National Guard Reserve component. And I have to tell you that I learned a lot from that too. I mean, when I was in Bosnia in 99 as active duty, we made fun of the National Guard and the reserves. Mm-hmm. Then when I went in Iraq, all of a sudden I saw we were on even footing, because the National Guard, it was no longer we were drinking beer at the firing range. Now it was like we're training and we're going to combat. And so seeing that transition in the Guard after 9/11 was phenomenal, and being a part of it. But then coming back and running a law firm, and also being a commander, it was great. I got to have units in other parts of the state where I was only there, maybe one weekend a month, because I had people strewn throughout the state. So even if I tried to go to visit every unit, I would have to, it would take me, I'd have to work every weekend. So, but I had full-time staff. So I really learned how to run a remote operation, back then. And so I'm grateful for the education I got from the military. And I want to, share some of that now that I've had the experience from the military side and from the civilian side, and say, here are some of the lifestyle things that can really help you. I think some lifestyle changes that maybe you made in the military that you have reverted from, that you need to get back to, but also just some of the leadership lessons and some of the management lessons as well.
Yeah. So what are the biggest differences between how you were leading in the military versus how you're leading in the civilian world? And what you were briefly mentioning that about kind of the crossover of taking those attributes from the military, and maybe it's not everything. You're not trying to bring in the bureaucracy. You're not trying to worry about the $2.50 canteen. However, you want to make sure that everybody is coming to work prepared and that they are paying attention to the details. So what are some of those things that you've brought over to the civilian world that you see most impactful?
Do you use a chain of command when you're?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We have a chain of command. Most of our leadership team is former military officers. So we use a chain of command. Absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say leadership team, are these still practicing attorneys? Or are these higher admin personnel?
So, yeah, I should clarify. So the way I have my leadership team broken down is I have a chief operating officer. He was a platoon leader in Iraq, a company commander in Afghanistan. I have a general counsel who was a Marine infantry officer.
That's awesome.
And then I have our former CIO was an Army Ranger as well. And then we have a head of HR. We have our CMO, who you've met. We have a director of sales. And then I have my 3 section heads. I have the head of the veterans law practice, the criminal section head, and then the personal injury section head. So that's that. I believe that's everybody, but that's the leadership team. And so we work as a staff, and just like a military staff, they'll do a decision brief, and they'll say, these are the 3 courses of action. This is the recommended course of action. So I'll usually say, I'll do the 4th course of action that you didn't bring up, right? just like all the commanders did to me. But no, so we have a great, the chain of command goes up. So we have, the way we've built our firm is we have commanders. So those section leaders, in our parlance, they're called commanders. Each commander, then, they have several platoon leaders. So if you are an attorney who has demonstrated leadership potential, then you could run your own platoon, which would consist of other lawyers and paralegals and support personnel. And so, if there's a problem, it comes up the chain. And so this is great because we only need one HR person. Now we do have a corporate trainer, but a lot of the HR issues, it's like I said, read Cy Wakeman. Hey, don't bring these issues to HR. This is a leadership issue. Your person isn't performing. Great. Now, once again, do they know whether they're performing? Absolutely, because we have those jumbotrons. You can't come to work and not know that you're performing. And so, in terms of our chain of command, yes, we have it built out so that it goes up the chain of command. And the leadership, the great thing is they're treated very well. They get compensated for their leadership roles. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's some lawyers who are brilliant who want to be technicians who want nothing to do with being part of a leadership team. And that's fine. There's room for everybody. But we do have a chain of command, and we enforce it.
Do those members who are sometimes in those leadership roles, are they also able to dual hat as a rainmaker, or are they kind of semi-admin / practicing?
It's interesting, right? You get the racehorses. There are people out there that they're going to win at everything, and they're going to do all three. They are rainmakers. They're winning trials, and they're leading their team. Now, most of those people, I'll just tell you, they really don't like the leadership piece. Like I can get a platoon leader who's got, like for instance, my wife is a platoon leader, and Mallory, and she runs the sex assault defense team, and she's got 3 lawyers that work for her. I think 3 paralegals, and she wants to be the best. And so she always says, "Look, if you're really good and you work your ass off, the money's going to come," and it certainly has. I mean, her team crushes it. They win a lot of cases. They do well financially. She takes care of their team. She's very generous with them, but she doesn't want to be the commander. She doesn't want to move up a level. And then I have other lawyers that are brilliant. I have a VA lawyer that is a brilliant technician. Financially, he's crushing it, right? He's just winning money. He got about $3 million this year for veterans and back pay award.
Wow.
Right. So he's doing great things. And he wants nothing to do with a leader. All I want to do is, hey, feed me some kids.
Give him the ball.
Give me the
ball, coach.
Give me the ball. Let me help the veterans. Let me do what I do. But I don't want to go to leadership meetings. I don't want any additional responsibility. And he's like, if I look at my effective hourly rate based on, I'm losing money if I'm wasting time doing leadership stuff. It's kind of his philosophy, which is fine. If you don't get fulfilled by it, don't do it.
Absolutely.
And your job as the commander, along with your team leads, is to make sure you find the right positions for those rainmakers and or leaders, right? I mean, because you're still a part of that, or is that mainly your admin?
Because oftentimes we want to promote those people. We're like, oh man, that person is crushing it. That person is the best. Let's make them the boss of everybody because they have shown such aptitude. So
they don't want it.
And they don't want it, or they'll just say yes at the beginning because it's a win. It's another win. How many times have you taken a promotion or done something that probably wasn't the best idea, but you saw it as another win, another check mark, another medal, another something that you could add to the trophy case? So yeah, to Chris's question, you as the commander, how are you deciphering and I guess getting through their BS and their competitiveness to say, maybe you stay in your lane. Maybe we just give you the football and you don't become the leader.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have had this experience. As a leader, you evolve. And I always think I was a much better leader in the military because I could show up, and if the young captain said, I said, okay, what's your plan? Hey, sir, this is my plan. And I'd say, okay, is that really what you want to do? Have you thought about this, and this? Yes, sr. Okay, go do it. I know it's going to fail, but that's okay, right? Because that's what training is for. But it's different, right? When you deploy, right? And all of a sudden, there's bullets coming down, right? Then you have to take a little more control. Well, in the real world, as a leader, every day there's, the business is at stake, right? One mistake could really hurt the business. Well, our clients who have entrusted us, their futures are at stake, right? I don't care whether it's someone who's seriously injured, someone who's facing charges, or a veteran who's been denied by the VA. They've come to us, right, with the weight of the world on their shoulders, and we have to help them. And so, when I think one of the challenges is, it's like we're not training. Every day is game day. As Joel Makovica says, every day is game day. And so if every day is game day, I, as a leader, a lot of times I don't give. I find myself in this really ebb and flow of like I'll say, hey, go run with it, until there's a problem, and then I'll pull it back and micromanage a little bit. And in many ways, I think I'm kind of the glue. Our chief operating officer, who comes from an Am Law 50 firm, which means one of the 50 largest firms, a billion-dollar law firm, he really runs the financial piece and the HR piece. And then we've got our commanders, who are the subject matter experts, right? Who are great lawyers and are great at training lawyers. But then there's this piece in the middle, right? Where there's, okay, but what about the business? Who really understands the tactics of the business development? Who really understands the tactics of the training to make them even better? And so I kind of act as the glue, right, between the chief operating officer and the commander. I'm making sure that everything works, and that role has evolved. And I'd love to say that I'm great at it, but I generally think that as a leader, I was a much better leader in the military because I could actually I could let go and distance myself and say I'm developing this leader. I think it's a lot harder when every day you're showing up at work and the problems just mount and mount and mount, and you get frustrated because you've invested a lot in someone who you thought was going to be a champion, who no longer wants to play the game, and you've poured your heart and soul into this person, right? And you said, I'm gonna make you great, and they're playing along, and then one day, for life circumstances, maybe you fail as a leader, but it doesn't work out, and you lose them, or every racehorse goes lame, and all of a sudden they just stop caring. And if my job is not to motivate people, if you're not motivated, go work somewhere else. I'll refer you to one of our competitors if you're not motivated. I got plenty of people I'll send you to. I'm happy to.
I do love that. I love that.
I think you're hard on yourself saying you're not as good a leader in the civilian sector as the legal world, because I think in the legal world, in the military, there was a respect you could demand that if someone didn't follow, they could be held accountable in much different ways than the civilian sector. So sometimes, look, as a butter bar, you show up and you already have respect. Well, not real respect, but at least you're getting saluted or whatever.
You got to read the book.
You got to read the book. I'm not saying you have actual respect, but they're forced to respect you. I guess that's what I'm saying. When people here, they're just like, I'll go on to the next place. And I love how you're saying it's not my job to motivate you. You couldn't go saying that in the military.
No, you're right. What they say, false motivation is better than no motivation.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's true. You were going to say something, yeah?
No, go for it.
No, so Mission Service Award is something else we were talking about earlier. And this is something you got going on right now that you've been doing. And tell us a little bit about that and how people can learn more about that.
Yeah, so we work with Channel 3 here. I believe it's KMTV. Is that right, Bob? We work with Channel 3, KMTV here in Omaha. And what we want to do is we want to recognize our heroes. I believe that heroism is infectious. And so is tiny heart syndrome, right? Tiny heart syndrome is the person who has the small heart, who doesn't seem to want to do anything. And when the going gets rough, they quit, they complain, and then it's infectious. And everybody else wants to quit and complain and talk about how bad it is.
The 95% that you
95%, right?
Yeah.
But heroism, right? You don't become a hero by not serving somebody. All heroes serve somebody. And heroes reach their status when they make someone better. And so the question for us is, who do you want to be a hero to? Who is that person? Once again, this is some Dan Sullivan coaching, but every day we get to choose who we get to be a hero to. And one of my challenges to my team every week at our 8 o'clock meetings is go out and be a hero to someone today. I stole that from Paul Funk. He was a 2-star out in a Fort Hood, I think, or maybe, I don't remember. Anyway, my point is, with the mission service, we get to identify those heroes and then get it out to the community. And then, and my hope is that it becomes infectious, that we build stronger communities. And I start with the military because everybody that joined the military had a calling post-Vietnam, right? There's no draft anymore. You want to do more. You want to serve. You want something to survive that is better than yourself. And I think that the great thing about the Mission Service Award is that we recognize veterans who are doing that next thing. And that's what I want from Writing the Next Battle, from veteran-led. Those are the individuals I'm trying to create. I'm trying to take those veterans who have the skills and let them lead in their community, because all veterans want to lead. All veterans want to be on the team. You want to talk about problems with PTSD, veteran suicide. The problem is this, and this is my experience and from talking to my soldiers and from talking to thousands of clients. You come back, you get the DD-214, and the team's gone. The purpose is gone. There's no sense of urgency anymore. There's no buddies to your left and your right. And what's your purpose now? What are you doing? You know, if you're going to get up every day and go to a job that you don't really like, and you're not really serving anybody, you're just serving a corporation, you're serving no purpose.
You're not growing.
Yeah, you're not growing. To me, that's hell. And I want to pull the veterans out of hell and put them where they belong, which is leading our community. And so that's why the Mission Service Award is there. I want to recognize those that are leading the community, and I want more to do it. And that's the call to veterans. Look, once you get out, especially Chris, I mean, do you stop serving your community? Do you stop growing? Do you stop developing? No. I mean, and for many of us, it's just the beginning. And so, you know, I think it's very difficult for some veterans to say, but what do I do? And I'm like, well, you got your GI Bill. And if you've got your VA disability benefits, you've got opportunities for education and for money, you know, go out and do it. Go serve somebody. Find out what that purpose that you want is and go do it. I mean, could you guys imagine having a job?
I can, because I stare at it across the street every day, and I remember going to it very fondly. I drive past it every morning, and I think about how lucky I am to come here. There's so many similarities to what you're saying about the veterans getting out and finding purpose. It seems like the 95%, and I was part of that, were after college, getting a job, getting promotions, but with no true purpose in my life except to collect that paycheck, spend that paycheck, to then wake up and continue to do the same thing. There was no lasting benefit of what I was doing. My purpose, when I started this, I saw a need to make housing better, to be a better landlord, to be a better investor, to be a better steward of other individuals' money that did not exist before this, or that I had never heard of. There are many people that we have helped. We have an investor list of 600 people. We've increased the value of our assets by over $60+ million. We are giving out distributions. The things that we are doing to change people's lives, that is purpose for us. I am helping my mom stay comfortable in retirement. That is purpose. That is purpose, helping my friends be able to see the ability to get to $1 million net worth, to see their ability to spend more time with their family and make those choices to embark on different endeavors rather than the 9 to 5 in which they've been basically predestined to. So I just love the mission. It doesn't seem like there's enough people talking about it. There's a lot of veterans with leadership, but you just grabbing the bull by the horns and bringing it to the community, bringing it to the civilian side, I think it's just amazingly impactful. So thank you again. That's amazing, because as you're making this community better, as you're building up leaders, the discipline from the military, and I was not in the military. The only thing I can relate to it is either starting a business or my high school wrestling. But once again, it's not near the same. But having some of the most well-trained individuals with such high levels of discipline that need to be pointed in just the direction, being told that they can do it, and being the leader that they need, it's just astounding.
I'm not going to forget this quote. Can you imagine having a job?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and to be, you know, probably all of us in this room are unemployable because we know what it feels like to have a purpose.
Oh, man.
And if we had to go 8 to 5 every day without a purpose, knowing that we're not making a difference in anybody's life, knowing that we're completely replaceable, I can't imagine living that life, right? Because, you know, at your old job, right, if you don't come back the next day, well, some people may have to pick up the slack, but they'll replace you, they'll get somebody in, they'll put another cog in the machine. But what you guys are doing here right now with your team is you're changing lives. You're providing opportunities. You're developing leaders. You're developing communities. You're developing the real estate, which, you know, is increasing the value of my real estate down here. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Anything for you, John.
But it's important. It's very important what you're doing. And yeah, what if you just had a job, you didn't make a difference in somebody's life, right? I mean, the other day, this is great. We had a little fun with for years, I had the son, and he wanted the PlayStation, the PlayStation 5. I tried to get it during COVID, couldn't get it. And you can go to this like third-party sites, but I'm always like weirded out by those, right? You know, like, oh, you could buy one for $1,000, but send the money to, you know, this.
Yeah. I met a guy at Quick Trip for mine. Just yeah. Could have ended badly.
Yeah. So I went to the store. I found two. So I got one for him for Christmas, and then I got one for that team, and we had a social gratitude contest. Nominate your hero from your team. And whoever gets the most social media, we did, shares, likes, comments, whoever gets the most interaction, what's it called, Morgan? Whoever gets the most engagement wins. So the great thing was someone got to be a hero to someone else. Someone got to nominate their hero employee and then say great things about them and then forward it through social media, and then everybody saw it. So the great thing is our heroes, hundreds of people, probably thousands of people saw this. And not only did they get to see the hero and recognize him, it was great because people came out of the woodwork that they didn't even know about to say great things about them, including our team members. But then also think about the impact it has on your organization, right? Where there's a little bit of competitiveness, but you're also marrying that with the gratitude for the performance. And the people get to acknowledge this person's been a hero to me and be a little bit vulnerable about, hey, this person helped me. And look, it doesn't hurt your business when stuff like that goes viral on social media, where people see that you're a business that cares, that have heroes in your organization that get recognized. It's going to help you recruit better people. But I think also, if I want to do business, I want to work with somebody who's got heroes on their team. Once again, because heroes serve people, heroes get results. And so that's something that we did recently. But I love being able to do stuff like that, right? Being able to help. I made somebody's Christmas because somebody's got to have a kid like me that's been wanting this damn PlayStation for 2 years, and now somebody's going to get it.
That's great. I want to be respectful of time a little bit here too. So in closing though, so we always like to ask a few questions. I have a couple listed here, but I want you to be last.
Yeah, no. So it's called the Final Three with C&C. So we ask you 3 questions. They change every time. But what my favorite question is, because I think it really is the building block of what creates us as entrepreneurs, as leaders, et cetera, is those daily habits. Oftentimes we're like, oh, what school did you go to, or what book, or this. It's doing boring things over and over. What are some of your daily habits or weekly habits that you just have to hit?
Exercise. That is when I do my thinking. So I would say exercise, reading, and there's so many things that I do.
Yeah.
But I would say, the main thing is exercising and reading, and doing something I really want to do, right? Doing something in my unique ability, right? I mean, I love to be in podcasts. I love to be in court. I love the public speaking. But if more than 2 or 3 days goes by and I'm just in the office, doing stuff that's not moving the needle, if it doesn't involve big relationships or big opportunities or big cases, then, it kind of like sucks the life out of me. And I get a little bit like edgy, right? And I know it's like, oh, I got to do something big. So I would say I have this habit of really trying to work in my unique ability, right? Getting out in public, getting out in front of people.
Are you a podcast or an Audible guy while you're working out, or is that music?
Silence.
A lot of Audible. Now,
A weirdo.
Yeah, a lot of Audible, a lot of podcasts.
Okay, all right. If you had to start over from scratch, meaning the entrepreneurial part of your life, so right after the military, what would you suggest to that entrepreneurial spirited person? What would you suggest as far as coaching and or books and or what motivated you and or what have you learned that if you could snap your fingers and start from day one, what would you change and what would you do day one?
I would say day one, I would have started with the mindset that nobody cares about you. Don't get embarrassed. Don't worry about failing. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to read your website bio. Nobody really cares. They care about themselves. So how can you serve somebody else? How can you improve that client experience? How can you better serve your team? I think too often when you're starting out, you get overwhelmed with all these questions about technical stuff. But if you start with the basics, saying, how can I provide value? And by the way, I don't care what it takes. Like look, lawyers, oh, you have billboards? Lawyers shouldn't advertise. Oh, you did this? That was stupid. Oh, you tried this at trial? Wow, that was a risk. But you know what? I don't care what those people say. At the end of the day, there, as you know, Chris, in the legal world, there seems to be an elitist group that they work for the big firm that they're afraid to try anything. They're afraid to do anything, and they'll look down at everybody and talk about them, but they won't do anything. And I think, a lot of lawyers have that noise in their head and ask them, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Well, and they can't give me a legitimate reason other than they care too much about what other people think. And I would say, when you're starting off, you're going to fail, you're going to crash, you're going to burn, it's going to suck. It's not going to be easy. I mean, people look at you guys and they say, oh, I would love to be Colin Schwartz for just one day. I'd love to be Chris Palmer for just one day.
Somebody told me that the other day and I said, good luck.
Yeah. But the problem is that they can never grow into being you. It's like the lottery winners always lose all the money, right? You won 50 million, but now you're at zero 4 years later because you hadn't developed yourself to handle that much money. you hadn't really thought through who is a $50 million person, right? Who is the person that has that money? And so, if you don't grow into that person, you're never going to get there. And to be that person, you can't care. Look at Elon Musk right now. You think he cares? Right? Everybody's talking trash, but he's changing the world. I got my Model Plaid S. Oh, or Model S Plaid. Oh, great car. Do you? Yeah. Oh, yeah. People, are you buying it because it's fuel efficient or because you're concerned about it? No, I'm buying it because it's the fastest production car ever made, and I like the technology, and I hate going to the gas station. I love it.
Solving problems.
Solving problems. Yeah.
How can other people learn about you, and or what are you doing to grow your team that people could probably jump on that opportunity? Because you have set the expectation in a very short amount of time. I wish we had 17 more hours because I think we're just scratching the surface here. But you set the expectation of what you demand, and it's very clear the people that work with you and for you are also demanding of that of themselves. It's you can just tell. I can't believe that your leadership group is made up of military personnel. That's phenomenal. It does not surprise me, but that's phenomenal. So what can people do to learn not only more about you and what you're doing and what your team's doing, but also jump on that team?
Yeah, so for the younger listeners, go to The Veteran Lawyer on TikTok. Our website, ptsdlawyers.com is our veterans website. barrylawfirm.com is our local website. You can find us on every social media channel, but I think the main thing is just Google Barry Law, Nebraska. You'll find us. I think barrylawfirm.com will tell you a little bit more about our history and where and where we're going. We're always happy to talk to young, hungry people who want to have that purpose-driven life. And so, please look us up. I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to provide guidance where I can. I believe what comes around goes around, and I wouldn't be here today if I didn't get a lot of great mentorship, a lot of great advice, and having a lot of great peers like you guys who are crushing it. Who, I see Colin's, losing weight and he's crushing it financially, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like I got to get my game together, right? And then, but I mean, to be fair, I met Colin, and he was out of shape, and he's like, I'm out of shape, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude, like, but hey, actions, not words.
Yep.
And and I think that speaks to who he is. Obviously, you have to have discipline and focus to be where you are. It's the same to stay in shape. You've got to have discipline and focus. I think to make great deals, you got to have discipline and focus. And I've been approached by people, obviously, I'm sure you guys have as well, other business opportunities. And if someone doesn't have doesn't have that focus and that discipline, I'm out.
Absolutely. That is one of the most, that's what drove us to each other. It was the 4 a.m. text messages, followed by the 6 a.m. phone calls, followed by the days of meetings, followed by the 18-hour trips to Wichita in one day to go see, 700 units and make offers and put on those phone calls. It was the discipline of the work ethic.
It was the Jake from State Farm moment where your wife catches you at 4 in the morning. Yeah, talking to Chris. Oh, what's Chris wearing?
That was all. I get all the time from my wife. She's like, who are you texting? I'm like, who do you think I'm texting?
Yeah. Hilarious.
But I think, to be fair, like I said, the biggest reason where I've got to is associating with the right people. And I mean, obviously, you guys have a great partnership. You're crushing it out there. You're leading a great team. And I think, the main thing is you found a team that can work together. And the two of you, it's tough to have co-leaders, but you guys do it extremely well. And that's something that's pretty rare. And I hope that your team appreciates it. And I hope you guys appreciate it. Not all business relationships last forever, and it's always a scary thing. But you guys are absolutely killing it. And I think the reason why is because you both bring something unique and powerful to the table that the other doesn't have. So once again, I think that I'm honored to be here, but I also think that you guys have really crushed it in Omaha. I know you've expanded past Omaha, but to see, to watch this evolve, and I guess you've probably seen it too, Chris, but to watch Colin evolve, and I mean, it's mind blowing.
Because you saw me with the first part-time employee, so that was when I joined Visage. That's when I first met you. So
yeah, and
it's been a long road.
Yeah, and so I mean, your growth rate has far surpassed mine. So now I got to leave here and do some push-ups and make some big investments and read some real estate books. Yeah.
Now, John, I want to thank you, first and foremost. Thank you for serving our country. Thank you for your leadership in this community. You are an inspiration to me when I see you driving through. You've actually got billboards in the back of some of my buildings that are posted there. And it's really cool to see somebody that's being so not only compelling, but has a mission to help people, but it is also evolving. You're not doing it in the same old way. You're not staying archaic. You're actually allowing others to grow. You're you're expanding this industry. So I just can't thank you enough, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you once again. It's an honor, gentlemen, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.